Good morning, everybody. First of all, very quickly, many thanks to Eric for sending me this T-shirt in the post. It's great to have an official Brendan Dassey Control Question T-shirt. So thank you very much for that, dude. I want to talk a little bit about the theories, the various theories as to why or how Teresa disappeared. More the whys. In this first one. And first of all, I'll start off by reading out my very first email that I sent to Robert Herman. I wrote, "Dear Sir, here's hoping that everyone involved in framing Stephen Avery is getting a good night's sleep, because they're going to need it. When Steve and Brendan are pardoned and compensated fully, you may as well separate Manitowoc County from the mainland, set it out over Lake Michigan, and watch it sink, whilst the rest of the world cheers. Your only hope is that those cowards that have thus far hidden themselves will face up to what they have done. Yours sincerely." And eventually, after like 24 emails to Robert, I did eventually get a reply back thanking me for my concern and suggesting that I check out the videos by the village idiot Dan O'Donnell, which I had already done. But anyway, enough about that. So the theories. Okay, so the big problem is facts. One fact that we do know for certain is that Steve and Brendan were found guilty of murder. Now, to use the words of Luke Berg, whilst that strains credulity, there are many other facts in this case that are similar. They are just not believable, acceptable. We cannot accept any fact that comes from Wisconsin via Ken Kratz or anybody else involved with the prosecution of Stephen Brendan. Now, we know that some people really hated Stephen Avery, particularly just after his exoneration. I must admit, I do find it strange that some people think that only Brendan is innocent. You know, that law enforcement, no, they wouldn't have any reason to frame Steve. Well, they framed Brendan, and they framed Brendan for one simple reason. No, in order to gain and to see some proper facts, a Kathleen Zellner evidentiary hearing will finally establish these facts. This is why the state don't want, obviously, an evidentiary hearing, because they're going to have to face up to the fact that Kathleen Zellner has all of these provable facts and experts who are going to come forward, like, for example, the bloodstain analyst, who is quite happy to testify that the blood by the ignition was applied with a swab. So at the moment, because of the lack of facts, you know, these are only opinions. These are only opinions, and I always remember a conversation I had with another YouTube lovely lady, Ali Apperson, and you know, she pointed out that one of the problems with this case at the moment is that you can actually poke holes in virtually every theory. You know, where by supporting one theory, that pokes a hole in another possible theory, for example. But here's how I see it. Obviously, other people see it differently. I'll just present my opinion on, you know, theory number one. This is number one in sort of order of what I consider to be the strongest case, if you like. Must admit, I do see huge reasons to accept several different theories and that some overlap. And certainly in this one, we have to think about the involvement of Manitowoc Sheriff's Department. How deeply are they involved? But anyway, my initial reaction to Making a Murderer was pure outrage at Manitowoc Sheriff's Office. And so that's why I wrote the email to Robert, why I phoned him, why I pestered him with emails, phone calls. I always said, if you don't want me to call or you don't want me to write, you just have to say so and I would stop. I always gave him that option, so I didn't. And, I wasn't sort of like harassing him and too much that he couldn't have turned around and said, look, Paul, just back off, will you? But he never said that. He never said that. In fact, I've got emails from months later where he's, saying things like, have a good weekend, Scotland looks beautiful, must visit sometime. So very, very pleasant, okay? The one thing about speaking with Herman is that nothing he ever told me has ever changed my mind on my opinion that his department is involved in Teresa's disappearance. For me, when Kenneth Peterson comes out and says on telly or radio or whatever it was, when he said it would be easier to kill Steve than frame him, that proves that conversation took place and that, assassinations are discussed, that there is obviously they keep it hush hush, but there is obviously an assassination department within the sheriff's office. So what I would say is follow the money. This is something that when I first started speaking with Chad Keller, follow the money, and it's perfectly true. Follow the money. Have a look and see the financial situation here. Now, and I've checked these facts. Soon after Stephen Avery was released in 2003, he was given immediately 25,000 compensation, and the Innocence Project received 18,000. That was straight away. And so we see him going into closed shops, so we can understand where the 25,000 was spent to begin with. And his initial civil suit was for a meagre 1.2 million. For 18 years, that doesn't seem very much, does it? The state, however, through Mark Gundrum, came back and offered 450,000. The big problem then, that the report by Peg Leixelager came back and said that no one was responsible, that nobody, Steve Glynn talks about and Walt Kelly talk about the fact that they were expecting members of Manitowoc Sheriff Department, to be facing criminal action, and at the very least, very, very strong condemnation. None of that happened. And what do we then find? We find out not only has Peg Leixelager exonerated everybody in the Sheriff's Department, but then we find out that there was a phone call to Andy Colburn back in '95. Some people have suggested, well, did they know? Did Andy Colburn know that it was about Gregory Allen and Stephen Avery? Well, that particular fact is irrelevant. It should have been reported there and then. As Dean Strang says, how many times in your career, Andy Colburn, have you had a phone call saying that you've got the wrong guy in prison? That was the one and only time. That should have been reported there and then. Now, did Andy Colburn, Jim Link, and Peterson know? Because Koshurik was the sheriff back in '95. Did they know that that phone call was about Stephen Avery? You bet they did. Why? Because the day after Stephen Avery was released, Andy Colburn writes a report about it. Follow the money. The civil suit became very personal. From a claim of 1.2 million, it suddenly jumps to 36 million because of the fact that they can clearly see just how bad the corruption in Manitrock Sheriff's Office is. And of course that civil suit names Dennis Vogel, Tom Koshurik and the Manitrock County Sheriff's Department personally. And of course because of their wrongdoing, they are not covered in insurance. Theory number one, without a doubt, the disappearance of Teresa, the timing of her disappearance was simply too convenient for Manitrock to simply be coincidental. It now appears that Teresa, having left the yard, was flagged down. Could it not have been a member of the Sheriff's Department that flagged her down? The blood spatter at the back of the RAV4. I can imagine that if you were to hit somebody on the head with a pistol, you're going to get a lot of blood splatter, like we saw, similar to a hammer. For me, theory number one, as I say, this is my opinion, but I'm going to stick my neck out and say theory number one, Manitrock Sheriff's Department. And isn't it interesting yesterday how Kathleen Zellner tweeted about the fact that in all her years as a wrongful conviction expert, exonerating all these people, she's worked with prosecutors, all over America. This is the first time that they've dug their heels in and not wanted to cooperate. Why does that happen? I think we all know. Anyway, bye for now. Catch you again soon.